In this lesson, we'll take a look at how to draw a bee with pen and ink. We'll begin on smooth Bristol paper by creating a light sketch with a graphite pencil. For this demonstration, I'm using an H pencil, but I'm making sure that I don't put too much pressure with the pencil. We don't want to create grooves in the surface of the paper. Initially, we'll begin with 3 basic shapes for the body of the bee, one for the head, one for the middle portion, and then one for the abdomen. Then we can start adding some of the shapes for the legs. The legs of the bee are segmented, so for each portion of the leg, I'll create a different shape. We'll also add a shape for the wings, and then we'll continue adding the segments for each one of the legs. Most of the lines at this point are nice and loose. I may draw several lines to indicate the shape. We can define the contours in a later stage when we start adding the pen and ink, but at this point, it's all about finding the basic shapes. Sometimes I think a lot of beginners get overwhelmed with the details, when what we should be looking for in the early stages of the drawing are just the basic shapes. We'll draw a couple of simple shapes for the antenna, and then we can go back in and start defining some of the other shapes that exist within the body of the bee. Like on the back side of the abdomen, we can see that we have stripes, but each one of these stripes forms a different shape. We'll also give a loose indication of some of the hair on the body. Then, using a kneaded eraser, we'll gently lift up these graphite applications, making them much lighter. We can still see to apply the pen and ink, but the lines aren't as strong as they were before. We'll begin with the eye. And in this case, I'll lightly outline the outer portion of the eye before reserving an area of highlight. Then we can begin the process of darkening the value of the eye by using cross-hatching. We'll allow our lines to slightly curve to indicate a bit of the form of the eye. I'm using a 0.1 micron pen for this entire drawing. The line that this pen creates is just 0.25 millimeters, so it's a very small line. We'll continue creating a few lines around the head to indicate some of the fur on the head of the bee. We'll add a few details underneath the eye, and then we can start darkening up the lower portion of the head. Here again, we'll use cross-hatching to do so. In fact, all of the areas within this drawing will use cross-hatching to make the values darker. With any drawing that you create, it's important to stay consistent with your application techniques. If we were to switch to stippling or perhaps creating random lines to darken up our areas of value, we might create a bit of inconsistency, but sticking with cross-hatching ensures that we have harmony and unity in the final piece. We'll darken up the antenna before moving on to adding a bit more hair and fur to the body. We can make longer strokes and change the direction of these strokes to further imply the texture and the form of the middle section of the bee. We'll define the outer contour of the upper portion of the midsection of the bee by pulling a few lines upward. Then we can start darkening up the areas closer to where the wing attaches to the body. We'll darken areas by creating a heavily concentrated area of directional strokes indicating the hair. We'll go ahead and define some of the lines for our first leg. Here again, defining each section with a different line. Then we can start darkening up the value, again using cross-hatching. We'll allow some of these lines to curve slightly, again furthering the illusion of form. We'll continue darkening by crossing lines over the top. We'll create a bit of variety by allowing some white specks of the paper to show through. And we can also add a few indications of fur, even on the legs. Then we'll return back to the body. As we continue working on the areas of hair in the midsection, we're pulling strokes outward, just as the hair would grow. This allows them to subtly taper at the end, creating the illusion of realistic hair. Of course, the illusion of texture is equally important, so we're going to vary the directional lines that we create here. And we can simply go back and make a few areas darker to create a bit more variety in value and create the illusion of a bit of form. We'll define the second leg the same way that we did the first. First defining the contours and then filling in the area with cross-hatching to darken the value. Now we're ready to define the edges of the wings. Now the wings are semi-transparent, so we'll use a broken line to define the contour. Then we can go back in and start adding some of the details. Here we have quite a bit of line variety or line quality that happens here. We'll pay close attention to the sections where the lines are a bit darker and create lines that are broken for some of the other lines that exist within the wings. We want to make sure that these lines are not so strong so that the wings lose their look of transparency. Now we'll simply continue working our way down the left and bottom portion of the body. We'll add a few more indications of hair on the middle portion, and then we'll finish off our third leg. Here you can clearly see areas of highlight that have intentionally been left open. Now we're ready to add the distinctive pattern on the back of the abdomen of the bee. Upon closer inspection, we can see that there's more happening here than just a change from lighter value in the areas of yellow to the darker areas in the areas of black. We also have a change in texture. The areas of yellow have a hairier edge, while the areas that are black are much smoother. We'll be sure to reflect this in the contour that we create for this section. Once we have the contour defined, we can go back in and start filling in the textures. We'll start on the upper portion of the abdomen. Since the texture of the black areas is quite a bit smoother, we'll use hatching and cross-hatching to darken the value. In the areas that are lighter, remember this texture is different, it's a bit more furry, we'll use directional strokes to indicate the illusion of hair. But before we work too far down the abdomen, we need to address the leg that overlaps it. On the outer edges, there's quite a bit of lighter value, so we'll define this area before darkening up the center portion of the leg. We'll darken up the center portion of the leg again with cross-hatching. Now we'll return back to the abdomen and the pattern. We'll create directional strokes again for the areas of lighter value, in this case pulling strokes downward, following the cross contours of the abdomen. We'll repeat this for each of the lighter sections within the pattern on the back side of the abdomen. The value within each one of these lighter sections does become a bit darker the closer to the right we go around the body. For this reason, we'll allow these marks to be a bit more concentrated in this area. Once our lighter sections have been defined, we can start filling in the darker sections. Here again, we'll use cross-hatching to do so. We'll make sure that our lines are flowing with the cross contours of the form of the abdomen, progressively overlapping them until we get a nice rich dark. These darker sections are quite a bit shinier than the furry sections. This produces an area of highlight on the left side of the abdomen, so we'll create a nice hard edge between the highlight and the darker sections, thus creating this illusion of reflection. Then we'll simply continue cross-hatching until we have this area nice and dark in value. Now we're ready to address our final leg. Here again, we'll start by defining the contours with a few outlines. Then we'll simply darken up the value by using cross-hatching. We'll be sure to allow these directional strokes that we create to flow along the cross contours of the form of each section. We'll also allow a few specks of the white of the paper to show through for added variety. Then of course, we'll pull a few lines to indicate a few hairs on this leg as well. Then once our ink has dried completely, we can use a kneaded eraser to gently erase all the graphite marks that may remain. We'll add a few more strokes on the back side of the body to indicate a bit more transparency through the wings. And now our drawing of a bee using pen and ink is complete. If you enjoyed this video, then subscribe to the channel. And if you want to learn even more about drawing and painting, then check out our comprehensive membership program, which includes video courses, live lessons, ebooks, lesson plans, and much, much more. To learn more about our program, just click on the button in the center of your screen or click on the card in the upper right-hand corner. Thank you so much for watching.